Welcome back, GRD132, to part 2 of ex11 Web Typography, and we're going to be working with some font families now, and we're going to be using Google Fonts so we don't have to rely on default fonts on people's computers. I've logged back into Replit right now, and I could see my most recent down here. If you can't find them, you could just go to My Repels and look there. Make sure it didn't get in a folder that says Unnamed. Sometimes they can get thrown in a folder called Unnamed. And usually unnamed are files like that, but I just want to point out if you can't find it. But here's my Pilsner one. So I'm just going to click on it to open it up. And when I left off, I had this opened up in a new tab, which we can do by clicking over here on this little open in a new tab, and I'll do that. And this is where we left off with margin around it on left and right, and some spacing that we adjusted with the subheadings, the H2s. These are H2s, these are H1s, and we're just going to put some fonts in here and just work with that a little bit in part 2. So once I open it up in a new tab here, I don't really need this, so I could kind of move this over so we have lots of room. We don't even need to see these over here, so I'm going to shorten it a little bit, but we are going to go back to our styles because that's where we were doing all our formatting that's here. Remember, we have our paragraphs, we have an H1 and 2H2. So that's about it. Pretty simple in terms of what we have here. And we also have our source down here. Now, one thing I might want to do here, and we didn't do anything to really separate paragraphs from each other because the headings are forming the difference. So what we could do here is put some paragraph spacing before this source down here. Now that we can even make that look different. But one thing we could do, just one thing about CSS that we can do, is we can use the same kind of padding top here, but I think what I'm going to do is go into my index and let's just give it a name. We'll give it a class name. We'll just go here inside the P, click right in here, and I'll do space, and I'll do class equals, and then I'll hit my quotes, and inside the quotes, I'll put source, because that's what we did. So I'll just call it source. That'll be my class name. And the class name will identify it and differentiate it from the other paragraphs. So we'll give it a class name of source. Although when we do target paragraphs, it will use that same font. If we just target P's, it's still a P, even though it has a class name. A class name just means that we can target just the class name. So that's what we're going to do right now. What I'll do down here, I don't need another body. I already had body up here. I'll put P dot source, because that means it's the paragraph with the name, with the class name of source. If we gave it an ID name, it would look like this. It would look like paragraph with the ID name. That little pound sign means ID, and the dot means class name. Now, I don't like the way it has the blinking cursor over that right now. They've made some changes in Replit, and I think they make things a little bit harder in terms of the way it was before they used this code mirror type engine in here, but we'll deal with it as we can. So I'm just going to put p.source and put my curly braces. They work fine. And I'm just going to do the padding top. I'll just put in padding. Now here's padding dash. Now padding top's not coming, so some of this autocomplete's still not working, but I'll put padding top and I'll just put 16 pixels. Now I don't need to put a space after the colons, just be aware of that. I could just do it like that, but I can't do this. I can't put a space like that. Notice that it's showing up in orange where these are in blue. So I can put a space here or not put a space, but between the unit and the number, I have to make sure I don't have a space because they go together, and I'll do that. So now it's targeting P with the class name of source, and when I go here and I refresh it, there it is. It took a second. So now it's getting that. And that way I can target it if I use a different typeface or whatever I want to do. So that's the first thing I'll do. And now what we'll do is we'll kind of look at some fonts. So I'm going to go to Google Fonts. And it's pretty easy to go to Google Fonts. Just go to Google Fonts. Go to Browse Fonts. And we'll try to make this simple in the beginning instead of looking around for all kinds of different fonts. We've done this before. We'll just find a nice serif font and a nice, maybe a slab serif for the headline, and maybe a sans serif for the sub headline if we need for the H2s. But let's just look at serif fonts right now. Now this is instead of using Times and anything that's on your computer. So we're going to link to this font when it's online. So we're going to choose serif, and then over here instead of trending, I'm just going to use most popular. And you'll see Roboto Slab is really popular. We might use that for our slab serif If you go into here, and you can see there's a lot of nice styles, a lot of heavy styles that look really nice as headlines. And maybe I'll have this as a headline, this extra bold 800. I'll select this style. You could select as many styles as you want. I'll just select it, and then it'll get put into this selected family, and you can keep adding to this, and then you could copy these links and put them in your web pages. That's what we're going to do. So I'll just close this up for now, and when we go back, you can always open this up again. You can always view your selected families here. So now when I have this open, I'm going to go back because I'm in select styles right now. So I'm just going to go back, and there's Merriweather, there's PT Serif is nice, Noto Serif. All of these kind of Google fonts for serifs are really nice and readable. Now this is a nice one. Serif Pro, it has 12 styles. Bitter is nice. This is almost more of an old style looking, but it's still a little bit modern and solid. I might choose this, so I'm going to look at Source Serif Pro. This looks nice. I'll just click on it. And it has a little bit of a square serif when it's thin, but the regular is a really nice font here. So I'm going to select the regular. And I don't know if I'm going to need the italic, but I'm going to select the bold just in case we need the bold. And I think that's it. Now you could select as many as you want, but that's all I'm going to select for now. And let's try them out. So I'm going to hit back here, and I'll go over here, and I'll see that I have source, I have Roboto Slab, and I have extra bold. And you can add more if you want, but I'm just going to use that for a headline. And then I have source serif, I have regular and bold. I'm not using any italic right now. And down here it says use on the web. So I'm going to click on use on the web. And if you look down here, they have a style tag to put this at import. Now that style tag means it goes in CSS. Well, we're not using the style tag in our index page. We actually have it in a separate CSS file. So we're going to put this right in our CSS page. So we can go here and copy this. So this gets both of them. So I'm going to copy this thing down here. Not the style tag. I don't want the style tag. That's only if it's in an HTML page, and we're not doing that. So we're putting it here on our CSS. If we did put it in here, we'd have to have it in a style tag, but I'm putting it here, and I'm going to put it right at the top in front of this, and there it is. So it's selecting those fonts, the 800. So if we have to use any more weights or anything, we'd have to go get them again. And then it also has the rules here, and we could copy this rule right away. Let me just copy one. I'll keep this open. We'll just do font family. I'll copy it, and I'll go to the paragraphs, all the paragraphs here. And I'm just going to go here and paste that font family, source Serif Pro, and then it has a comma, then it says serif. That means if this doesn't work or it doesn't load for whatever reason, it's just going to use whatever the default serif is in the browser, which a lot of times is Times New Roman. Now you could put something else here if you want, but I'm going to put that in there now. Like you could go here and put Georgia and put a comma. Now, one thing to point out, if the font has multiple words, like Source Serif Pro, and there's no dash in there or anything, you have to use quotes. Georgia would not have to use quotes. Now, Georgia is a standard font on just about every computer, and it's a nice serif font, like Times New Roman, but it's a little heavier. It works a little bit better on screen. So I'm going to put that right now, and then also I'm going to put font weight. Now, it should use 400 by default, but I'm going to use font-weight. Now, again, this stuff isn't coming up, but I'm going to put 400 for now. And that's all you have to put is 400. You don't have to put anything else. So now that I'm specifying all paragraphs get the font family, and these are kind of first choice, second choice, third choice. And Source Serif Pro is the first choice. And this would not work unless we didn't have this import in here. So this is pulling the fonts off the web. So let's go here and reset it. And you can see it has a little more kind of weight to it. It just works better on screen. We could make it a little bigger if we want. If you feel it's a little on the smaller side, we can adjust the size if we want. We could go here and put font size, and this is very relative. So what we could try right now is like something like 110% and see what that looks. We'll just use a relative amount, like a percent. We're not using point size or anything like that right now, but we could try 110% just to see what it looks like above default. And that looks a little bit better. It's a little nicer, easier to read. and it looks a little bit cleaner than we had in the Times New Roman. And then what we could do for this headline, we'll put this in the slab serif. So we could go back here to font family Roboto slab. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to look for the H1, and I'll put it here. And that's all I'll do, and I'll put font weight, because we did pick certain weights. I'll put font weight again. And actually, if I didn't do font weight, I just want to show you. If I didn't put font weight there, and I refreshed, it still looks bold because an H1 is always bold. That's what I want to point out. So it did come out bold, and it doesn't look bad. And we can try the weight. So we were using 800. So let's see if that makes a difference. It may not. It may have just defaulted to that. So I'll put font weight 800. And always make sure to put your semicolon at the end. And let's refresh this. And it doesn't look any bolder. So it was defaulting to that 800. It used that as its bold. So that looks good. If you want to make that any bigger, we could even make that a little bit bigger. Now you got to watch what percents, because H1s already have a certain percent. So if I put font size 110%, it sometimes will give you odd kind of sizes. So let's just see what happens here. And look at that, because now it's doing 100% of a base size. So you have to kind of adjust a little bit. Maybe I'll put like 300, see what it looks like. And that's really big, so I'll go back and put maybe 200. And not bad. We'll maybe put 220. Okay, that looks, I think, a little bit bigger. And that looks fine. And down here, we can use these again. We can use the slab serif here if we want. Or we can go and find a sans serif. Let's go find a sans serif. And I'll go here now and uncheck that and put sans serif. And I'll just close this up over here, and it's still on most popular. And again, Roboto, not Roboto slab, but Roboto has a lot of nice styles here, and that's a nice font as well. And Source Sans Pro, that kind of goes with Source Serif Pro. I think that's what we use. So why not Source Sans Pro? It has 12 styles. We'll go in here. We'll get a nice bold. The 700. I'll select this style here. That'll look nice for an H2. And I'll go here, and here's my Source Sans, and you can see what happens. It gets added to this thing. So what you could do is even highlight this whole thing again, this whole link. We had a original one. I'll click on @import, make sure you do that. But now you can add this in here, or you could just copy the whole thing again. I'm just going to copy the whole thing again. Remember, don't copy style. So I'll copy that. And I'll go back here and I'll just replace this up here, because now we're adding a new font because it's linking there. So I'll put that in, and you can see it has the Source Sans Pro in there now in the import. And down here there's Source Sans Pro. So I'm going to copy that particular declaration, the font family Source Sans Pro, and I'll put that in for the H2. And I'll leave it as that. Should be fine for now. And you could put something else if you want to, put Calibri or something that is on a computer. Sometimes you can put another option in case you don't want it just to go to Helvetica or Arial or something as the default sans serif. So I'll throw Calibri in there. And then I'll also put the font weight 700, even though it should line up because it is a heading, but I'll just put font weight 700. And remember, font-weight, the 700 number, no unit for the weight, and then just a semicolon to finish it off. So we'll go here. We'll see how that looks, and that looks nice. Now we're not putting any color in here yet, but we're not worried about color. We have a color background. We could certainly throw in color, and we could do that on another version. But for now, I just wanted to get us used to kind of using these fonts a little bit and making it nice and readable. Now, we could certainly center this if we want. If we want to adjust this a little bit more, maybe we want to go to the H1 and maybe make it a little bit bigger. I'll make it like 250%, make it bigger, and maybe I want to center it. I can go to something called Type Align, which again is not coming up here in our autocomplete. Type Align, and I'll just put center. And we might want to put a little more padding bottom. So what we could go up here, maybe put that to like 12. Because now that it's a little bigger, we might want a little more space between that, and see how that looks. So we'll come here and we'll refresh. And, oh, I'm sorry. I see without the autocorrect, it's text align. Text align center. Let me see if that works if I start typing text dash align. No, it's not coming up. But text align center. But that should work. Let's see what happens here. Okay, now that's centered. We have kind of space here. I don't know if that looks better or not. Maybe we could even go bigger. We can make it like 280. And that looks okay. So that's our document. If we still think that it's the line length is too wide, we could always go back and adjust the line length. That was body, that was margin on either side. We had 160. Maybe go here and put 200. That won't be a whole lot because remember we're just in pixels, but that'll put more on each side. I'll put 200 on each side and just go here. And that brings it in a little bit. So that's a nice readable document. It's kind of what we were working with in Illustrator. Something nice and readable, easy to read. And if they make the page smaller, it gets even smaller because we have that margin on either side. Now, if someone was reading this on a phone or mobile device, we'd have to adjust that. So when you get to a certain width, you wouldn't need all that margin anymore. But this is designed for the web page right now. This is designed for a computer screen, not for a mobile device. So we would have to do something to change that so it was more readable on a mobile device. And are we going to deal with that? Yes, we are, because if we're working with typography, we have to deal with that on the web and on mobile devices as well. So we'll deal with that at some point. But for now, we have a nice readable document using some nice Google fonts here, using a nice slab serif for headline, using a nice sans serif for the subheadlines or the H2s, and then using a nice body copy with a little bit of line height thrown in here, which is source Serif Pro, I think we were using for that. If we need to make this any smaller, we could target that and make it smaller if this thing is too big, but that's okay right now. And that's all you have to do right now for ex11, working with web typography. That's kind of a little introduction, and like I said, I'm struggling a little because some of these autocompletes are not working the way they used to in the past since they've updated the editor a little bit. So some of these things are a little more challenging because you're not getting feedback and you're going to make more mistakes if you don't type things correctly. So we'll deal with that as we go, see if we can fix anything with that or anything that helps. But that's all you have to do. Now, when you're done to turn this in, I didn't go over that yet. All that you have to do is you could do it here, you could do it here. I would do it here, that way I could go in and see your code and everything. But if you go here, whether you're on index styles, it doesn't matter, just as long as I see your username up here in your Replit address bar. You just have to go in here and copy that. So just copy that, Command C, Control C, and then when you go back to coursework, you're going to go down to Unit 7 and look for ex11 web-based typography. And you're not going to click on this because we already did that to open it up. You're going to click here, and just like we do for the Gravit assignments, you're going to go to Add Comment. You're going to insert a link, and this is where you're going to paste your Replit URL. And make sure this is a new window, just like we do with Gravit. So it makes it easier to get back to My Warn if we need to. So make sure you change this to new window. That's your URL. Hit save, and it'll look like that. Hit save again. And you're done with ex11. We're going to do some more with that. We'll keep building on some of this stuff. The formatting, we could throw pictures in there and different things as we talk more about the typography for the web. And we could also talk about what happens when it's on a mobile device and we want to view it like this. We don't want all that margin on either side like that. So that's something we can also deal with in terms of responsive design. That's called responsive design, meaning it'll respond when the window becomes a certain width or if it's being viewed on a different device. So we'll deal with that later. But for now, that's ex11 web typography.